It's so
Don't make it
dangerous.
funny.
Just, yeah, start it.
No.
Cut it.
And my finger.
Is it filming?
Yeah.
Okay.
What if can I lower my,
Here, no, that's fine.
I mean, I just lowered.
Oh,
my-
yeah,
is
you're
that-
good. You're okay.
It's a little weird looking.
So I'm here to inquire about your career path.
Okay.
I'm
You
very.
want me looking at the camera or you?
Whatever you want to do. Whatever you want to do. Just be natural. I'm really interested.
I mean, I don't typically look at the camera, but
I'm interested in your career path and your work experiences, and I'm interested in learning more about your past profession.
Okay.
Of course, you're a teacher now, but you were in the Peace Corps for how many years?
3 years.
3 years in the Peace Corps?
Mhm.
That is awesome.
3 years and a few months.
Okay. What was a typical work day like for you?
It was, I was a teacher in Peace Corps, so it was similar to what it is here. I'd wake up in the morning, I worked at 2 campuses, so there was a larger campus in Kumanovo, so it had, let's see, I'd say about 700 kids. I might be a little bit off there. Bigger classes. I'd work with 2 English teachers there. And some days of the week, if I was with Martin, who was another one of my counterparts, we'd go to the village school. We either take the bus there, which was about a 10-minute bus ride, or we'd walk if it was a pretty day. The classes there were a lot smaller, but we were teaching English as a second language, so we were teaching English. English is a required course for all the students at the school, and that's starting from 3rd grade on up. So I taught 3rd grade up to 9th grade.
Okay. And what steps after high school led you there?
So the first thing, you need some sort of degree or work experience in specific fields in order to be admitted into Peace Corps. That can be experience or education in agriculture, oftentimes in health sciences. The teachers, of course, and we had several teachers, folks who work for NGOs, so various community organizations. I'm trying to think what the specific sector was referred to. So a lot of folks think that, hey, I have a political science degree, and I'm very interested in working for the State Department. I'm going to do Peace Corps. You're not going to get in with just a political science degree by virtue of you've not had any work experience in the fields that Peace Corps needs volunteers in. So you need some specific skill set, and that's variable depending on your country of service and depending on what you want to do. But I'm trying to think, like an English degree, that's great. That's great, but it's not going to be enough, because ultimately Peace Corps sends volunteers in order, most certainly, to build an understanding between cultures, but we're sitting there to do work. It's not just a culture exchange, even though that's a humongous part of Peace Corps' mission, but we're expected to be competent in some sort of field.
I got you. I got a little bit.
Okay.
Just the lighting treats you a little bit.
Thank you. I mean, I feel like this is going to be on network television, and I'm going to be like, come on, Christian, why do I look like this? And it's going to be very disappointing.
It's great. Well, we'll fix it in post.
Fixing post is not reassuring.
We'll fix it in post. I'm a very good editor. There's gonna be cool music in the
can't
background, like
completely
lo-fi.
make my face.
Do you want what is it? Porridge radio. Porridge radio. I'll porridge radio for you.
That would be some pretty
Copyright?
awful.
I know, it's fine.
Yeah, copyright is concerning on many levels there.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
I'd rather not get sued.
Let's not make this video 20 minutes long. Thank you for your information. How do you balance your work? Okay, we'll cut that in post. How do you balance your work and personal life in this job and in your past one?
I think that's most certainly important to do. Now, Peace Corps, and most certainly the job here, I mean, we were told straight up, you are on call pretty much 24/7, meaning that when you walk outside, you represent the United States. And going into Peace Corps from Ocracoke, that's not all that disconcerting, because I mean, here, when you walk out your door, I mean, you represent Ocracoke School, and people see you as a teacher at Ocracoke School. So those boundaries professionally in both the Peace Corps and Ocracoke, I think, because we are, as teachers, such integral parts of the community, and again, I think that is true in Peace Corps, or true in Peace Corps and in Ocracoke as well, that I think it's important to maintain some semblance of a balance that, hey, I'm either going running right now, which is something I do here and something I did in Macedonia, or I'm going to read a book now. It's not math related. It's not related to teaching English. It's just going to be something I do for myself. And that you bring your, and again, I am first and foremost a teacher, and I think it's important as a teacher that you bring a complete person into the classroom, that you are just not a shell of an instructor, that you have interests and passions, and that you can bring those into the classroom. And again, that you can only do that if you commit to having some semblance of a balance between your work and personal life. So professionally, yes, it's important for self-care, mental health, most certainly. But I think, especially in the teaching profession, I think it's very important as a teacher and to be an effective teacher to maintain some balance between the work you do in the class and the interests you pursue outside your workday.
I like that answer. What do you think of the increasing integration of AI into society will mean for your job in the future?
I think there's a lot of unknowns there. Personally, I think I maybe mentioned to you before, it's exciting. I think it's the first piece of technology that I've encountered that I'm like, wow, this could really be something. I mean, I do remember getting our first computer when I was younger, maybe 5 or 6. We had an old Apple, and then we got an old Gateway desktop. I remember dial-up internet, and it took time. I mean, the internet, when it came about, was not instantly transformative. It had the power to be transformative, and now I do believe it has most certainly transformed how we live, but it took time. A lot is going to happen between now and 2035. I think it has the capacity to enrich the classroom space in a way that I don't think we could do with just a chalkboard. But again, it has the capacity, it has the potential. Does that mean it would do it? And as with anything, we're going to have to regulate it. We're going to have to make decisions insofar how can we use this tool for the betterment of society, instead of, hey, let's just enable people to write horrible posts on Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, as fast as humanly possible, and post that garbage left and right. And I mean, we're going to have to grapple with this new reality, and we're going to have to grapple with it quickly, and mistakes are going to be made. But how can we, as a country and as a community, make decisions that make our community stronger, that make us, give us a leg up instead of tearing us down? And I don't think we know the answer to those questions yet. Do I think I'll lose my job within the next year? I mean, it's not going to be transformative to that extent at this very moment. But I think it has the capacity to change teaching, which could be very, very good. And that it could enliven the classroom space, and that it could allow teachers to plan more projects take the rote instruction away from specific individuals, allow an AI to do that, and then allow the instructors to plan projects, to plan experiences for students in the real world. I mean, there's that potential there, but we've still got a long, long way to go. But it's most certainly interesting.
Nice, thanks. And what do you enjoy most about being a teacher?
I enjoy, every day is different. I never know what challenges I'll encounter. At Ocracoke, I have quite a bit of autonomy. I get to make decisions about my classroom, which is, we have Ms. Cole to thank for that, and our other administrators as well, Ms. Jeannie, Ms. Mary. So, I mean, that is a culture of Ocracoke. It's challenging, but in a fulfilling way. I mean, my dad was an engineer, and my mom was a teacher. Her stories were always 100 times better than my dad's. So, I mean, she was the person who made people laugh at Thanksgiving or Christmas with stories from her work experiences. Whereas, I mean, my dad just couldn't compete on that field. I think there are a lot of ways the teaching profession could be improved, especially in North Carolina. But it is something it's where I've spent my entire professional career, and I have in general enjoyed it.
And if you don't want to answer this, you don't have to. But segueing into that, the pay with teaching, what do you wish you would have done something differently, or how do you deal with the pay?
I think it is so. Again, my dad was an engineer. My mom was a teacher. My mom has said several times the only way, and I have two other brothers, that situation worked with her being able to teach, just because my dad made significantly more. So forth. Money never had to be. We most certainly were not wealthy, but money was not a concern. And again, I had two working parents, but for two parents who are both teachers and have 2 or 3 kids, money is going to be it's something that needs to be discussed, and oftentimes quite regularly. It's going to be difficult. And I do think that's unfortunate. I do feel as if we value if we value a profession, we're going to show as a society that we value that profession by paying those folks a little bit more in the living wage. I mean, yes, most certainly a living wage, but we are showing that person that their job matters to our society, to our democracy at large, by how much we compensate them. And in some ways that's unfortunate, but that's the world we live in. We are a capitalistic society, and that's how that works. In some ways, I am concerned in some places that, again, we are not showing that we care as a society about the teaching profession. And again, I most certainly do not expect to ever be rich from teaching. And I don't, you'll never get a teacher to say, because I mean, we teach because we care about education, and we care about ensuring that the world we live in is the best that it can possibly be. But if we're going to attract talent, if we're going to make schools a cornerstone of our society and our democracy, we need to, one, recruit the very best. And in order to recruit the very best, you're going to, one, have to treat teachers as professionals, and to make sure that they're sufficiently compensated. And in some places, I think that is most certainly true, and in others, I think we still have a ways to go.
And just one more question. Do you have any advice for someone interested in pursuing a career in your industry?
I mean, when I told my mom that I wanted to be a teacher, she was told me point blank that I should reconsider, and said that she and my dad would pay for an extra year of school if I needed another year of schooling to figure something out, and that I should not feel pressured into teaching and becoming a teacher as a profession. Ask that question one more time for me.
Do you have any advice for someone interested in pursuing a career in the
No, thank you. So, long story short, to get back to the point, I mean, it's tough, and I wish I could tell someone who was interested in pursuing teaching as a career that they will have the experiences that I've had. And again, I think by and large, I've had I've had good experiences in education. I think I've been very lucky. I mean, Ocracoke was my first job out of school. I had a great experience in Peace Corps. I worked with 2 top-notch educators there. Again, that was luck. There was nothing there that oh my goodness, Jay's from Ocracoke, we should put him with Martin and Milica. It was entirely luck that I was putting them, and we had a great experience, and I had a great experience there. And then I've come back here, and I've had a great experience. I am concerned that I could not guarantee a great experience for a smart and capable student. And of course, when you're giving somebody advice, you want to lead them into a career in which they're going to be fulfilled, in which they're going to be challenged, but they're also going to grow and have opportunities to grow, and professionally, socially, and be happy. And again, I think it's most certainly possible in the teaching profession, but I think there are some intangibles that sitting in this chair I can't account for, and that can make it, even if you are one of the best and brightest, that can make it difficult to find success and a sense of fulfillment in education, which is sad, and I don't like saying that, but I think it's true. So I would want that person to be fully informed as to what they're walking into, and I would also tell them to be very careful, make sure where they apply, the schools that they apply to and want to teach in, that they feel as if they are a good fit. And I think that's something I've always been very careful about. That, I mean, there's some places where I don't think I'm going to have the impact that I think I'm capable of having. That I'm not a great teacher in every single school and in every single situation, and I think that's true for almost everybody, and I think that's okay. So there are a lot of schools out there. There are private schools, there are public schools, but within private schools there are a lot, and public schools, their methodologies, their different beliefs as to what constitutes education are dramatically different. And I would tell that person, find a place where you feel at home, and where you feel like you can make a difference as an educator, and that stick up for yourself and do the work to find that place for you. So that would be my advice there.
And I am interested in what happened. What pushed you? Like, even when your mom said, like, don't do it. What pushed you to be a teacher?
I'm comfortable in this space, and part of that is, I mean, I literally grew up in a classroom. I mean, this has been a part of my life for a very, I mean, my mom stopped teaching when my brother and I were born, but she always talked about it during those years. Then she went back to teaching fourth grade when I was in sixth grade. So it's always been a part of my life. I know the work a good teacher puts in, and I know the difference that a good teacher can make. And I do believe they can make a profound difference in the lives of individuals. I don't know if that changes transformational at a societal level, but I think they do help build strong communities, and I think that is unbelievably important in our country. Again, it was something I felt at home in, and I feel like I've been tremendously lucky. Even when I was in university, I volunteered at Carolina Friends School, which was a Quaker school. The schools that I did my pre-service training and then my student teaching, they were great. I always just had wonderful experiences in school. I've been aware that, and I mean, there was a time, most certainly after Peace Corps, where I was like, should I step back and figure out something that will make me more money? I mean, I seriously looked at going back to get a degree in engineering. I mean, because I can do, and this is right after Peace Corps, but I mean, I seriously looked in to doing something different, and the big reason why was money. I can't deny that. And ultimately, I decided against it. I mean, it's a decision I don't regret right now. Again, I don't have a family right now. Would I be forced to move in a different direction if I had 3 or 4 kids? Yes, there's no doubt, unless I was with a partner who could bring more financially to the table. But because it's a hard profession to raise a family on, unless you've got some other outside source of income, and it's just the reality of the situation. But I stayed with it then, and I'm still here now because I believe education is vitally important, and I do think it makes a dramatic difference in the lives of individuals. Again, I've seen it with my family. Whether you look back multiple generations, I mean, I am from an area, we're not 30, we don't have to go get on a ferry to get to where I live, but I grew up in a very, very, very rural part of the state of Virginia. And education was, and still is, everything to my family of vital importance. And it has made a true difference in my family at large. When my dad got his degree in chemical engineering, made a humongous difference in my life, even though when he got his degree, I had not been born yet. I mean, but that was a transformative decision for my family, and I can't deny, and that is because of education and because he had a degree. I mean, my brother is, he has his doctorate in English, and he had major fellowships, and he did not pay to get his PhD or grad school, but that's all built upon that we were raised in a stable environment where education was that foundation and allowed us as a family and us as kids to have access to so many more opportunities, even though I grew up in Craigsville, Virginia. I know firsthand that education more so that can make a true difference, and I don't think everybody sees it that way. I wish people did, but I believe it here. I mean, if you look at the folks who graduated, I mean, this is such a major opportunity for so many people. And the work the folks put in middle school and high school, I mean, it has the capacity to be truly transformative for both them and if they decide their families. And that comes from doing well at school. So I do believe that what we do here does matter. And again, I do know that other people disagree with that or have a different spin on that. But again, personally, I do truly believe education matters, and it can be transformative for a community and a nation at large. So that's why I'm still currently teaching, and I'm still not displeased with my decision to continue teaching.
I like that a lot. Very good interview. Very good interviewer, Mr. Yule.
Yeah, I mean, I'm better with a little time.
No, he did more than I asked for, so I'm gonna cut it up a little bit.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, on a real interview, I don't know. Usually I was a little slow. I usually come in with a little more energy. You got me.
No, I liked it. It was very
pensive. It was slower. It was slower.
It was real.
Now I will say that. I mean, I hate when somebody comes in, and I've given, and scripted answers do nothing for me. I mean, you want if you are interviewing, you want them to see you as a person.
So being a teacher seems like a great job, right? But with the problem with pay, what pushed you, even though the pay isn't the best, to be a teacher?
That is something that I thank my dad for, right? I mentioned he grew up really poor. For his entire life, most of his focus has been on how can I make the most money I possibly can, both so he didn't have to deal with poverty and his kids would never have to deal with poverty. We didn't grow up like wealthy, but we were firmly middle class when I was growing up. And because of that, while there were certainly times in retrospect that I realized, we were closer to poverty than I recognized when I was a kid, money was never something that I felt the need to worry about as a kid. And my dad taught me enough about like financial responsibility and personal financial skills that I'm pretty good at managing money. So while the money for teaching isn't what it should be, especially in places like North Carolina, throughout the South, it's really hard to get good paying teacher jobs. Because of some of the values instilled in me by my family growing up, money has never been something that's super important to me. So long as I have enough that I can live a comfortable life, meet all of my needs, meet some of my wants, and I can take care of those that depend on me, I have enough. My students don't always believe me, but I have never had a desire to be rich. I've had a desire to be okay. And with a few tricks here and there, it's possible to be okay as a teacher.
I respect that. Oh, that's awesome. Okay. So, I'm here to inquire about your career and your career path to get you where you are today.
Sure.
I'm very interested in how you got here. So can you just explain your career path?
I'm trying to think of a short version. It's been a windy path so far. So I grew up in a family for whom education was really important. My dad grew up in a pretty rare kind of poverty, where he grew up with dirt floors, sleeping on the ground, no running water, going to bed hungry most nights kind of poverty. And he was taught from a very young age that education was the way out of that. And that worked out very well for him. He's gone on to get a master's degree, has started multiple companies of his own, and always drilled education into my sisters and I from a pretty young age. And then my mom was a teacher and then later a principal. So I had kind of a front row seat to the behind the scenes of education growing up. So initially I wanted nothing to do with being a teacher when I was growing up because I had seen how hard it was on my mom. And then through my time at university, I went through a number of different majors, and none of them quite seemed to stick until I started studying history and education and fell in love with it very quickly. As far as the career part of that goes, I started my teaching career in Memphis, Tennessee. I was teaching at Kingsbury Middle School. It's a fairly poor community in Memphis, under-resourced school, more students than they're able to service, not enough teachers, not enough money to fix a lot of those problems. And that was probably the hardest job I've ever had. I ended up leaving there after 2 years from a combination of burnout and having lost a student in a drive-by shooting. In combination with some personal issues, it was just more than I was able to do in my early 20s. That led me into my hitchhiking phase. So I was on the road for about a year, just traveling around, meeting different people, trying to figure out who I was, what I wanted. And from there, through word of mouth, I found my way to Ocracoke. And have been teaching here ever since. And it was about 2 years ago that I reached the conclusion, I think education is where I need to be, but I'm real tired of people making laws and rules about education who have never stepped foot in a classroom or haven't been in a classroom in 20 years, which is what led me to start my master's degree in education policy. And we'll see where that pans out and whether that takes me into a research field or a political field. Unsure so far.
I like it. So being a teacher now, and I know you're about to leave, but let's focus on what you're doing now.
Sure.
So what's your work day like now? What's day in the life?
If all goes according to plan, usually wake up between 6:30, 7. I prefer a slower morning. Come in, get some stuff set up, grab some coffee, teach my classes during planning period. I try to get caught up on grading, do some lesson planning, and it really depends. My work day has a lot more to do with the various classes I'm teaching and student dynamics. The schedule itself doesn't change much, but a different group of kids in the exact same class can make for an entirely different class. When I first started teaching education, one of the things that I was concerned about was I'll be teaching the exact same thing year after year after year. What if I get bored of that? Fortunately, I love history, so I haven't gotten sick of communicating that content and that information, those lessons to students. And every single class I've ever taught has a dramatically different classroom dynamic and has its own kind of unique classroom personality. So that has prevented any stagnancy from teaching. Oftentimes I try to get out of here by 4, try to maintain what I can of work-life balance. That's a whole lot easier now than it was early in my teaching career. There's definitely a reason that more than half of teachers don't make it through their first year. Because figuring out how to build up your curriculum, balancing that with lesson planning, balancing that with grading, with communicating with both students and parents, and balancing what is being asked for administrative purposes is a whole lot to balance. I don't think teacher education programs do a good job adequately preparing people for what the first year of teaching looks like. Typically, my experience was teaching got about 50% easier every year for the first 3 years, and then if you can make it to year 3, it gets a whole lot easier from there. So outside of the classroom, I have maybe 2 hours worth of work per class that I teach. I try to give at least an hour worth of planning, an hour worth of grading for each class each day. And that is probably down from maybe 3 hours per class for grading and for lesson planning when I started my career. So there's definitely a lot of front loading and a lot of work at the front end of teaching.
I got you. And that you were talking about it, but just that's my next question. How do you balance between work and your social life? Because I know teaching's kind of a more personalized job than
Sure.
a lot of others.
For the first 5 years of my teaching career, I didn't. I'm sure there are people out there who have figured out how to, in the early years of teaching, have a good balance between their life as a teacher and their life as a person. I was really bad at that. Among my personality traits, not necessarily good or bad, but just something that I've learned about myself, I am all or nothing in almost everything that I do. If I do something, I go hard, or I have no interest in it. So especially early in my teaching career, it was really hard for me to have a life that wasn't part of me being a teacher. That was basically all I was for a few years. These days, I have done a better job, especially over the past 2 years, initially by necessity, because I couldn't just be a teacher while I was in grad school. I had to find the balance between those two things. And then in friendships and relationships, realizing that while I love teaching, there is a big portion of the joy in my life that comes from my friends, that comes from staying close with my family, that comes from my relationship with Julia. And so I've done a better job this year at, when I leave between 3:30 and 4 o'clock, doing everything I can to make sure that work stays here. And when I leave this building, I get to be Michael, not Mr. Shu.
Okay, nice. And just a follow-up, with Ocracoke and other schools you've taught at, I understand Ocracoke, you are looked at as one of the only high school teachers here, so it is harder here, right? Or how do you explain that?
It's hard in different ways. What I tell people who have never taught in a situation like this is that I am the entire high school history department. One of the things that I love about that is the freedom that comes with how I want to teach things. I don't have a grizzled old department head who's saying, this is how we teach this because this is how we've always taught it. If there's something that I want to try differently this year, I'm the one that gets to make that decision because I'm a department of one. If I have really strong convictions that I need to try to implement anti-racist principles into how I teach American history, there's no one that's going to tell me you cannot do that or we don't do that at this school. So I love that freedom. As far as the workload and the planning load, it initially was a lot heavier when I came to Ocracoke because when I taught in Tennessee, I taught one class 5 times a day. I taught 7th grade world history to 5 different classes of 7th grade world history. So I was only planning for one class. Whereas here, I have 6 classes that I teach per year. So that's a whole lot more on the planning. And 6 years into my teaching career on Ocracoke, I've got all of my curriculum set. I know how I like to teach things. So moving forward, anywhere else that I were to teach, it'd be a breeze. Because I did so much of that additional work in my early years here.
Okay. So Ocracoke has been helpful.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. I firmly believe that I'll remember Ocracoke as the best job I ever had.
I like that. And what do you enjoy most about being a teacher? What do you like?
It might not always come through in the classroom, but it's you guys. It's the relationships that I get to build with students. It's the occasional moment when I have a student who learns to love history. It's the debates that I have with you and Nicholas and Rainier about different takes on history. It's the moment when a student who really struggles academically grinds through and manages to get that C or that B that they worked really hard for. It's those moments when one of y'all comes to me and says, Mr. Shu, I got into governor's school, or has a really cool opportunity that even if it's in a really small way, as one of your teachers, we help get you guys to that point. And that's one of the best feelings that I've had in any job.
I love that. And these 2 questions we kind of already know this, but how many years have you been doing this?
So 6 years at Ocracoke, 2 years in Tennessee, so this is my 8th year total.
Okay, 8 years, and then the next one's how much longer do you plan on doing it? But I'm guessing this is your last year? Or?
No, so I have a teaching job lined up in Rhode Island. I'll be teaching high school history in Providence as well.
Okay.
One of the really frustrating but important things that I took out of grad school, I'm so glad that I have a much deeper understanding of how the policy and legal sides of education function in the United States now. I think that will make me a more effective teacher. But part of my personal philosophy and my personal approach to how I live my life is, even though I didn't grow up with a ton of money, even though my life has had its struggles, I grew up with a whole lot of advantages that not everyone has, right? And so I believe that with those gifts, with those advantages, I have a moral obligation to do as much good as I am able to with this life, to maximize my positive benefit on the world. And what my time as a master's student has taught me is we do not need more researchers. We do not need more people lobbying Congress about education laws. We need more and better teachers. So I dropped 2 years of my life and $50,000 to decide to stay in the classroom.
So
I expect to have a full career as a classroom teacher.
Okay. And I think you'll enjoy this one.
Okay.
How is the ever-increasing integration of AI into society is going to affect you and your job?
I think that's a question that I can't answer. I think we don't know what we don't know, and I think the ways that AI is going to impact the classroom haven't even been thought of yet. I have seen kind of a divide in the discourse over artificial intelligence in education, where there are those that think it's going to be a negative impact on education in future generations, and those that think it'll either be neutral or a positive impact because artificial intelligence is a tool. I tend to lean towards the positive impact. I think we need to be careful with how we engage with artificial intelligence, but I think it could be an incredible tool. I view this advent of a new technology similar to like 50 years ago, bringing calculators into a math class. The debate was, oh, students are never going to need to learn math again. They can just do it on a calculator. We still have math class, and it's more important now than it was then, and it's more accessible. My hope is that in the way that being able to use a calculator has made math more accessible and opened that field to more people, that artificial intelligence will open new fields and new avenues for learning and contributing to our society that we haven't even considered yet.
And as a teacher who's really open about being productive and being procrastinating sometimes and all that, how do you manage your time? What's not the secret, but what's your way of going with it?
That is an ongoing struggle. I've struggled with procrastination, with my ADHD for most of my life. I still struggle with it. I've made the decision for myself to try to manage it without medication, just because I don't like all of the side effects of ADHD medications. And so, like you guys see on a pretty regular basis, the way that it impacts my teaching career, I'm so bad at getting grades in on a timely manner. So I certainly haven't overcome that. I have also kind of learned to not beat myself up too much over it. I've learned to alleviate the anxiety associated with that. And my phrase, my mantra for myself is, if it needs to get done, it will get done. If it doesn't get done, it probably wasn't that important. It's not going to be the end of the world. Lists are helpful. Learning over the years how to prioritize what's important and what can wait. If it's something that just impacts me, I can put it pretty low on the priority list. If it's something that directly impacts another teacher or my students, it usually finds its way to the top of the priority list. So I think the biggest thing as far as time management, avoiding procrastination, has just been getting better at not procrastinating with the important things and knowing where I can allow myself to procrastinate. Grades they're going to inconvenience you guys when I'm slow to get to it, but they're always going to get in by the time they need to get in. And at the end of the day, most of y'all are phenomenal students, so I'm not that concerned about it. When it comes to things like lesson planning, when it comes to things like having your stock market game ready, and having to put in some more time to figure out how to operate the new system, that was something that if I procrastinated on that one, it impacts all of you guys. So
I see. I like that. I think that's really relatable. What's been your biggest success factor? I know procrastination is one of the bad things, but I mean, you have made it to being a really good teacher. And what's your biggest success factor?
In a professional sense, in a personal sense, in an academic sense?
Any and all?
In an academic sense, purely from a teacher perspective, I think I count my greatest success as my ability to implement anti-racist curriculum into our American and world history curriculum. So much of what I taught you guys in American history was not taught to me when I was your age. There was a part of that where I had teachers who refused to acknowledge the truth of American racism. Some of that history was actively hidden from me. And then I had well-meaning teachers who could not teach me that because they didn't know it either. So being able to ensure that a future generation, or at least our chunk of the future generation, knows, regardless of what you guys do with that knowledge, that you know something that I didn't know until I was in my late 20s. And will be better equipped to deal with the world as a result. I think that's my greatest success in the academic sense, in the relational sense of a teacher. And for obvious reasons, I won't name names. I had a student who was struggling with anxiety, depression, and suicidal tendencies who was alive because of me. Who was struggling with being queer and being closeted and having a really religious family. And not feeling safe in their own home or in their own body. And just something as simple as having my pride flag up and being open about being a queer teacher, and having grown up in a religious family, and creating a safe space where that student could come and talk to me, is what got them through that point in their lives. They're no longer in contact with their family, unfortunately. That's not safe, but they have found a new family. And are out and living their best life now.
I respect that a lot. I respect that. And then just one last thing. Do you have any tips for someone wanting to be a teacher or going into the industry?
Allow yourself to fail. If you're looking to be a teacher, and I will say this to you specifically, if you don't become a teacher, cool. If you do, I think you would make a phenomenal teacher. Give yourself room to fail. You will teach bad lessons. You will make mistakes. You won't always have the answers. You'll teach something incorrect and realize it 3 years later, when a student has graduated and you sent them out into the world with something that wasn't true. Be gentle with yourself and ask people for help. You don't have to have it all figured out in your first year. Almost a decade in, I don't have it all figured out yet. I think that would be my advice.
I love that. I love that. That's great. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Shu.
Absolutely.
It's a very well worded interview.
So are you thinking about teaching?